These are your superpowers, positive character strengths. You have them, all of them, some more than others.
What we are best suited to do in our lives connects with who we are and our character strengths.
Standing up strong, activating your superpowers is how you can change the world.
And you're pioneering the future of humanity.
Let's start right now. I'm Jackie Congedo. On this episode, you're going to meet Jeff Bryan. Jeff and his friend Mike Irwin both graduated from West Point, where they were taught the importance of character strengths. The men were deployed multiple times overseas following the terrorist attacks on 9/11. Jeff and Mike served their country alongside people from all walks of life who differed in many ways but were unified in service of their mission. Once Jeff and Mike finished their military service, they wanted to bring the lessons of character strengths to civilians. And today, the two brothers in arms lead the Positivity Project, a nonprofit organization that brings character strength lessons to schools all over the country. So it's so great to be here today with you, Jeff Bryan, co-founder of the Positivity Project, coming to us from sunny Savannah right now.
Yes, it is a beautiful day here.
It's a privilege because we're talking today about your work sort of organically coming to this framework of character strengths and sort of understanding it as this untapped opportunity to reach people and to bring out the best in them. And you've done it in this amazing application for schools, but actually you didn't come to it from a school setting, which is really interesting. You have a military background. So I'd love for you to just sort of start with your own personal story, serving in the U.S. military, graduating from West Point, and how did you stumble on character strengths in that space?
So I attended West Point. I graduated in 2004. So 9/11 happened when I was a sophomore. And there was a good friend of mine there. I was a lacrosse player. He played baseball, and we had a lot of common friends. He was 2 years ahead of me. His name was Mike Irwin. And so Mike and I, after we graduated, we both deployed multiple times overseas. Mike deployed to Afghanistan once and Iraq twice. And I deployed to Iraq twice. And after his last deployment, Mike went and studied positive psychology under Dr. Chris Peterson. And Chris Peterson is one of the founders of the field. As you know, he helped develop the classification of these 24 character strengths that the VA uses. And so Mike told me all about his work with Dr. Peterson. And it really stood out to me, being able to see people's character strengths and see your own character strengths. And so in 2015, we were just looking at the state of the country, and we started a Facebook page, and it was called the Positivity Project. We had this logo. We had a design company in Chicago called Rule 29. They created it for us. And we just had a Facebook page talking about character strengths and positive relationships, because Dr. Peterson said that he could sum up positive psychology in just 3 words: other people matter, period. And so that's why our focus was on relationships, but through character. So that's really how I came to learn about positive psychology.
Wow. Yeah. And Dr. Peterson, along with Marty Seligman, right? Dr. Seligman, founding this field, thinking about our friend here in Cincinnati, Dr. Neil Mayerson, who was part of that sort of team early on that thought we maybe should think about this differently, instead of talking about what's wrong with people, to talk about what's right and how we can help people lean into that. So you came out of this military space, you and Mike, and identified this, started as a Facebook page, but it's grown into something much more. Now you are in a whole network of schools with this. So how did you get from a place of, and I also actually would love to hear a little bit more about how you see the strengths framework. I'm imagining that pieces of your military background latched onto this as well, right? And obviously with Mike. So I'd love to hear about it a little bit more on the military application, sort of why do you think that resonated with you in the spaces you're in, and then how you made the pivot to schools.
Yeah. So in terms of why it resonated so much, in the military, you're working with people from all different backgrounds, all different political views, all different religious views. And, what really matters is the mission and how do we all come together to achieve the mission. And when we were in Iraq, that was really our focus. What do we need to do to be successful here? And when you're working with people from different backgrounds, you need to understand who they are, and you're looking at their character. And I didn't have the vocabulary then because I didn't, realize that there were these 24 character strengths. But you were looking at things like, is this person honest? Do they have integrity? Are they humble? Can they take feedback? Am I humble? Can I take feedback when I'm wrong about something? Do you have gratitude for the good things that are happening? When we were deployed, there were some really long days. We'd be out for 3 days at a time and then back for one at the base. So you have to find those little moments to be grateful for, like
Yeah.
seeing a sunset or whatever that is. So as I learned about these character strengths, I thought back a lot to my time in the military and specifically deployed overseas, and I saw the application of those. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, that this was a really powerful framework. And, alongside Mike, we just said, this is something that we think that the country needs.
Yeah.
And when we started that Facebook page, it was a teacher who reached out and said, hey, we need this at our school. And then so we just put together something quickly. And when we went to visit, about 3 months after they started implementing it, they said, this is the best way we've ever taught character, and you should bring this to
Wow.
schools across the country.
Wow. So what's the network look like now of schools that you engage?
There's 875 partner schools that we have
Wow.
across the country. They're primarily so there's 20 different states that we have partner schools in:
Oh my
urban,
gosh.
suburban, rural districts, public, private, charter schools, a couple of home schools as well, and even a couple of international schools in Australia, Hong Kong, where people just found out about us and brought it to their building.
Yeah, I love that because it is, in terms of the way it was developed, it's strengths that transcend culture, history, time frames. It's like universally valued characteristics across cultures and throughout time. And so the fact that you've got partnerships all over the world doesn't necessarily surprise me, but it is really cool. Um, can you share a little bit more about what you've seen come out of this integration in schools? Like, give me a couple examples of the change that you've seen or that you've heard about from your partners in these districts after they've started using the strengths framework.
Yeah, so it's an upstream approach to building a positive school culture. By consistently focusing on these different character strengths, students understand themselves better.
Yeah.
They have more self-awareness and also more self-confidence because of that self-awareness. So for example, if you score 30 points in a basketball game, you're not saying I'm a good person because I scored 30 points, but you're looking at what went into that. Probably perseverance, probably some humility by listening to your coach, probably teamwork. You're not doing it on your own. So then you can take those strengths and apply them to other areas of life as well, both inside of school and outside. And at the same time, it's helping you understand and appreciate other people at a deeper level. You're understanding their kindness, their gratitude, their integrity, whatever those strengths are. And what we've seen is that's the formula for more positive relationships. When
Hmm.
you're understanding who you are and who other people are at that level of character.
Yeah.
So in schools, that's what we're seeing. We've got research led by Dr. Justin Garwood out of the University of Vermont that he's seen student sense of relatedness increasing.
Mm-hmm.
And the most common response, in this survey that he had and in this peer-reviewed journal was the Positivity Project makes me feel understood. So students are feeling like through this framework, through these character strengths, other people are understanding who they are at a deeper level. And that's helping them build more positive relationships in their lives.
Yeah, I was nodding because we do. I shouldn't say we. I can't take the credit. Our amazing education team at the Holocaust and Humanities Center leads a Youth Leadership Day, actually a series of them every year, and character strength is heavily sort of undergirds the whole thing. It's woven throughout. And there's one activity that we use. You may also use this with your schools as well. The strength spotting, right, where you know you get strength certificates or cards, and the students can hand them to each other and say, I noticed leadership or humility or self-awareness in you, humor, and I want you to know that I saw that in you just now. And we always get feedback forms after the event. The day is over, and one of the most powerful that we've received is a student, I believe a middle school student, saying, I felt so seen. I just felt
Yeah.
seen. And we think about sort of the I hate to come at it from like a deficit. Really, it's all about the opportunity. But we think about all of the greatest challenges that we face in our world today, and I think so much of it, the underpinning is that people don't feel misunderstood and don't feel seen, and they don't see themselves often. They don't understand the value that they have. And so it is so powerful. I feel like when people first get introduced to this framework, like it's all fluffy and like it's, oh, how, it's, are we getting at the problem here? Or is it just a bunch of like, talk? And when you see the empirical results of how this improves cultures and how it creates cultures of upstanding, which I want to talk about next, it's really powerful. So,
Yeah. It really is. It really is. It provides, the vocabulary to understand yourself and to understand
mm.
other people. Yeah, it's very powerful.
Has it, we're living in this world of total polarization and division and identity politics and, othering all over the place, right? Vilification of the other across political lines, across identities. How has the Positivity Project maintained its sort of position to work with everyone? I mean, I know that similar to the work that we do, it's one of the reasons we love this framework. But I'm just wondering, like, has there been any bumps along the road in terms of having to navigate this terribly difficult time using this framework?
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely bumps along the road. And it's tricky because people come in with different notions of what character education is or what
Mm,
social and emotional learning is. And we fall
right.
under, both of those frameworks. But we have schools in red and blue states and districts, and we're really
Mm,
proud of that. And that's why we started the Positivity Project, because we could have continued to serve our country overseas. After the Army, I was in the State Department for a couple of years in Washington, and I was actually in Jerusalem for a few months as well. Um, but Mike and I both made the decision that we wanted to leave active duty and leave government service and come home and be home with our families. But we also were asking ourselves, what can we do to continue to serve our country in some way?
mm.
And this is our continuation of that service. And so we want to be able to support schools in all different walks of life across the country.
And the potential there when you think about, we certainly have threats externally, but the threats internally as a country in the way that we, vilify each other and the social cohesion aspects, to have one framework, right? That our young people are understanding from a place of strength, a common vocabulary to understand the value in each other and the humanity that we can see in each other. That is definitely service from the inside, and we need to make sure that we pay attention to, to that as well. Let's talk a little bit about upstanding.
Mm.
While I don't think it's necessarily, your particular application or goal is to create cultures of upstanding through this strength. That is really where we sit at the Holocaust and Humanity Center, is trying to use this framework to talk about how people can use the best in them to stand up for themselves and for other people. Do you see that happening sort of anyway? I mean, what evidence do you have in terms of your work with schools to show that this character education through this strength framework is sort of enhancing cultures of upstanding?
Yeah. So what we talk about is that character strengths aren't about ignoring the negative. And we say that
Yeah.
optimism is one of the 24 character strengths. We talk about character as being able to overcome life's inevitable adversities. So you're always going to face adversity in life. So what do you do when times are tough? You can't show perseverance without first wanting to quit. You can't show bravery without first feeling fear. So we're
Mm,
teaching that to students, all the way from pre-K to 12. And we see behavior improvements. A school just wrote a blog post for us from Michigan. They saw a 75% decrease in bus referrals in just 4 months of implementing the Positivity Project
wow.
from the year before. 50% reduction in behavior issues overall
And
in the
you said
school.
in what referral? In bus referrals?
Bus, yeah. So just issues on the bus. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
there's
Yeah,
always been
right.
issues on the bus,
Yeah.
but they saw a 75% decrease in bus referrals,
Wow. Well, and
50%
that's where
decrease.
kids aren't necessarily like, there's no less supervision, there's less rules, there's less regimented activity, and so kids are kind of left to their own devices on the bus. So the fact that they're governing themselves better, they're more in check with their own um their own behavior and the way they treat each other is, I think,
Mhm.
actually, yeah. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, no. So you have to imagine that there's upstanding that's happening there, right? Where someone
Yeah.
sees
Yeah.
something and they say, "Hey, don't do that. That's not the right thing to do," and the other student stops,
Yeah,
or
instead
they
of it
just have more
elevating
respect.
to a referral. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And, a really powerful story that I heard 2 years ago at a school in Clovis, California, just outside of Fresno,
Mm-hmm.
is when we went to go visit, the teacher asked the third grade students to say, what character strengths have you used recently outside of school? And all these hands shot up, and she called on this one girl, and she starts telling this story. And the teacher had heard it before. She said, "Oh, yeah, we remember that." And the girl told us a story about she was riding her bike in her neighborhood, and a car sped by and hit her front tire. She's a third grade girl, hit her front tire, and then sped away. So it was a hit and run, hit the front tire of her bike. She said she was shaking. She was extremely scared. And she said she thought back to the Positivity Project lesson on bravery, and that she knew she just had to be brave. So she rode her bike home as fast as she could, straight into the garage, and then ran inside and started crying and told her mom what happened. But she said she didn't cry until she got home, and she thought back to that P2 lesson. So to me, that's one of the most powerful stories we've heard about the Positivity Project, because you're using it outside of school and you're thinking back to those lessons that you learned in school and applying it to a real world situation that is difficult and dangerous.
How many years has this been happening? Have you all been working in schools?
Since 2015.
So you've got almost 10 years of data now. I mean, are you all working on any? You mentioned you've got a researcher, you've engaged. I'm always curious, like, the more you do this longitudinally, what can you see about how cultures shift, and how are you looking at that in the research you're doing in terms of the longitudinal impact?
We are, and we need the resources also to fund that longitudinal
Yeah,
study. So that's
it's very
also,
expensive. Yeah.
it's expensive. So Justin, the researcher out of Vermont, he's written 3 peer-reviewed journal articles on the
Wow.
Positivity Project. He just recently just barely missed a U.S. Department of Education multi-year grant that would have been really nice to do this kind of work. So hopefully he gets it next year and we can do some of that research. But what we have seen is, students' sense of relatedness, so the quality of their relationships, their behavioral and emotional development also improving. And he's just finishing up a quasi-experimental design study now on relationships as that. I think it's the distal factor. The proximal would be character. The distal would be relationships. So
Right.
he's focused on that to see, this focus on character strengths, how does it impact your relationships?
Wow. Yeah. It's incredible work that you're doing. And I'm so excited, just to be able to tell other people about it, folks in our networks, and for people who might come to us through the particularity of the history of the Holocaust to understand, the broader implication for this science and how it can be used. I'm wondering if, for folks who are listening on their commute or while they're working out, and they're going to put their phone down and go on with the rest of the 7 billion inputs that they have today, what do you want to stick with them? I mean, what do you hope people take away from this? If there's just maybe 2 concrete things from what your experience has been working with this framework as it relates, to using it, that you would want people to do right when they put their phone or their device down.
Yeah, I'd say focus on character and focus on relationships. So those are the 2 things, character and relationships. So from a character standpoint, think about your own character. Are you acting with integrity, gratitude, humility? The list goes on, creativity, humor. There's, this broad range of character strengths. What character strengths are you bringing to the table? And then your relationships. Are you being present with people, giving them your attention, which is really tough today? And are you identifying and appreciating what's good in other people? Are you seeing their character strengths? So I think that's it. If you focus on character and relationships, life is going to be a lot better.
Well, Jeff, Bryan, thank you for your service. Thank you inside and outside our country. And thanks for all you're doing to lean into the positive and to try and create these communities and these school communities and beyond, because you said it doesn't just stay at school. This really is, lessons for life that channel the best of us as upstanders in our world. We certainly need it. So really appreciate all you're doing, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jackie.
Our thanks to the Marison Family Foundation and the VIA Institute on Character for supporting this series. We have a link in the show notes so you can take your own free character strengths survey and learn more about your strengths. We'd love to hear about your experiences with character strengths and how you're using them to stand up. You can reach us anytime by email, and you can listen anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or visit holocaustandhumanity.org/podcast. You can also connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at Holocaust and Humanity, and X and Facebook at CincyHHC. The Upstander Ripple Effect is a production of the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanity Center. This series is part of the Cynthia and Harold Gutman Family Center for Storytelling. Visit us in person at Historic Union Terminal in Cincinnati, Ohio, or online at holocaustandhumanity.org. Executive producers are David Wise and Jackie Congedo. Managing producer is Ann Thompson. Consulting producer is Joyce Kanan. Technical producer is Robert Mills. Technical director is Josh Emerson. Opening sequence is by Ken Furman. Select music is by Kit Lee. And this is recorded at Technical Consulting Partner Studios in Cincinnati, Ohio.